Welcome to our Long Live Alternative Parties podcast. Today, friends, we have another exciting guest on this podcast. His name is Andy Ellis, and he's with the Green Party of Maryland, and he's running for the highest office for the statewide race in Maryland, the governor's office. So welcome to the podcast, Andy.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here, and thank you for having me on.
We are glad to have you, and if we could please get started by you kindly giving us an introduction to yourself, a brief biographical sketch.
Yeah, sure. So, as you said, I am a Green who is running for governor in Maryland. I grew up here. I went to high school and college here in Maryland. Most of my family lives here. I was on the debate team in high school and in college and at Towson University. And then I spent about a decade traveling around the country, coaching debate at the high school level, middle school level, and college. And then in 2005, I came back to Maryland. And I've been here since then, and I have been involved in the Green Party since about 2015,
Okay.
and I've been everything from a state and local officer to a candidate to just a regular member. All
right. So I trust your debating experience has direct relevance to your political work.
Absolutely, it does. I think that debate taught me a couple of things that I think are really important to political work, and especially third-party political work. One is research. Obviously, being able to find good sources and good arguments is important in both. Another is making persuasive arguments. I think a lot of politics today is about chasing voters as opposed to about shaping arguments that change people's minds, and I think we need to be able to change people's minds. And the third thing that I think it has been super important for is what I call argumentative empathy, which is the ability to understand somebody else's argument or somebody else's position, even if I don't agree with it.
Sure. Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah. So, Andy, for this race that you're running for, what is your green vision for the office?
Yeah. So, first of all, if I'm the next governor of Maryland, I think that we need to put in place what I sort of call a solidarity economy, which is an economy that works for everybody, that is not dependent on multinational corporations, and it's not dependent on the federal government or defense contractors. Instead, it's built on local manufacturing, regional collaboration, public banks, cooperatively owned businesses, and things that allow us to keep our money in Maryland and to keep our economy based in Maryland. I also think that we need to have a vision for a multi-party democracy in Maryland where more parties are able to be healthy and participate,
yes,
and a grassroots democracy where we're able to use the electoral process and the initiative process in order to pass things that the Democrats who've been in control since 1866 won't pass.
So the initiative process, I'm sorry, I cut you off, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So the initiative process in Maryland is the way it is it something that you like, or are you wanting to change that to better assert grassroots democracy?
Yeah, so at the county level in 14 counties, we have charter amendments which allow us to affirmatively use the ballot box in order to propose and pass things that regulate our county charters. But there's no statewide initiative in Maryland right now, and so the only way to make constitutional amendments is if the legislative branch does it and starts that process. So we would like to see a constitutional amendment that made Maryland an initiative state so that petitions were able to get something on the ballot so that voters could vote for it.
Great. So in some of our interviews, the guests are uncomfortable talking about their opponents. Other times they don't mind. So if you're comfortable addressing your opponents, that would give us a good perspective. So if you don't mind doing that, would that be okay?
Sure. Yeah, sure. So, the sitting governor of Maryland is Governor Wes Moore. He was elected in 2022. He won by like 30 points. So he started his tenure with a whole lot of popularity and a lot of excitement. I think that there's a lot of people who suspect that he is intending to run for president in 2028. And so it often feels like he is not governing like a person that won with a 30% majority and has a trifecta in state government. It feels like he campaigned on progressive things and is oftentimes moving toward the center or agreeing with the right on a lot of things. And so I think there's a lot of people who feel that way. A lot of people who worked for him and were excited to see him get elected feel kind of disappointed that A, his attention is elsewhere, and B, what he delivers on does not match the words that he campaigned on during the election. Now, the Republicans have yet to pick the Republican field is still coming together. Last time they ran a far-right MAGA candidate who is not going to do well in a state like Maryland that has 66, or that has a 2/3 majority for Democrats. So, but Governor Larry Hogan, who was the governor for 2 cycles, was ineligible to run last time. But based on the way the term limits work in Maryland, he is eligible again. So there's a good possibility that a sort of moderate Republican who even flirts with the Forward Party and the No Labels Party will be against Wes Moore in the race. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with that. And then there will be probably a libertarian, probably a working class party, maybe another party here or there, maybe Forward Party will have somebody as well. So we're looking at, probably a 4 or 5 person race with Democrats and Republicans being likely the current governor and the most recent former governor.
Okay. So since your state it sounds like it's a very blue state, do you like that, or do you think that all the Democratic support is people are going to get mad that you're in there, or do you think it's a good thing?
I like living in Maryland. I choose to live here, and I'm happy to live here. Much of my family lives here, and I have no intention of leaving. So I think that I appreciate the state. I think that one of the things that frustrates me is that Democrats have a veto-proof majority in both the House and the Senate at the state level, and they have all statewide constitutional offices, and they run the 8 largest counties in the state out of 24 counties, where almost all the population is. And I think that they are very timid in using that. I think they're very timid in using those advantages in order to do really transformative things for the people of Maryland. So I think there's a lot of Democrats who agree with me, a lot of more progressive folks and a lot of folks on the left agree with me and appreciate seeing the challenge to the establishment Democrats on that. I also think there's a whole bunch of people who won't agree and will be upset that we're challenging a Democrat, especially in a world in which Larry Hogan, who was, as I said, the 2-time governor, might be running. If the Republicans run another MAGA candidate that's going to be a 30-point spread, nobody will care whether we're running or not. If the Republicans are running the only Republican to be able to win statewide office in the last decade, I think more people will care because they will be worried that we will take votes away from the Democrats and stop them from winning. Okay,
that's an interesting position you're in then. So how do you I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So I just want to say on that, I think that threat to take votes away, I know a lot of times people will say, no, our third party is not spoiling or whatever. And some of that is true, but I think the threat to spoil and the threat to take votes away because the party is not delivering for its base is the way the third parties wield power in a 2-party system. So I'm not worried about that. I think it's important to hold the Democrats account to what their base wants, to what they promise, and to what their values are. And if they're not willing to do that because of political expediency, then they should face a challenge from their left. And, I understand that people are uncomfortable with that, but I think that's how we make change via third-party ballot lines.
Sure. So what are some of the big issues in this campaign right now?
So, the race is going to be in 2026. So I don't know that the clear issues are defined yet, but coming out of the last legislative session that just ended, there's a couple of things that I think are going to be really important. The economy is one of them. Going into this year, prior to Trump being inaugurated, Maryland had a $3 billion structural deficit. And they raised taxes. They did some progressive taxation. They did some increased fees and things like that. But that's not really going to go away. And you couple that with the fact that Maryland's largest employer is the federal government. And then the next set of largest employers are contractors and researchers and a whole bunch of folks that are under attack by the Trump administration. So we are going to need to talk about what a Maryland economy looks like that is not dependent on the federal government in D.C. Being right there. And that's going to be a huge issue that we face going forward and will be a huge issue in the campaign. The second thing is energy. Maryland is a small state with pretty determined renewable energy goals, which is good, but we are surrounded by bigger states that are building a lot of data centers and things like that. So energy prices have been going way up and energy supply is relatively constrained. And so Maryland is in a real squeeze in this regard because we are in a multi-state compact as it relates to energy production. And so all sorts of transmission lines are being put through people's homes and people's neighborhoods in order to give Virginia data centers energy. And we just don't have enough. And the corporations who we have given sort of monopolies over our energy market to are raising rates and on ratepayers. So that's another thing that's going to be really big. A third thing I think is going to be education. So a couple of years, in 2021, I believe, the Maryland General Assembly passed something called the Blueprint for Maryland's Future, which is a $30 billion investment in public schools in the state of Maryland. And we are a couple of years into it, and the bill is going to start coming due for it at the state level next year. So I think it's important that that investment was made, but now we have to start figuring out how to pay for it out of general revenue and out of taxes. And that comes at a time when, we're facing what looks like $400 million in cuts from the federal government. So you think about those three things, the economy, energy, and education. I think there's going to be a real test about what vision whatever candidate has in order to keep those things working, and to help us move forward into the next decade. And I think, we will offer distinct solutions to those things than what the Democrats and the Republicans offer. And I think there's plenty of voters who are willing to hear distinct solutions because they're tired of business as usual politics.
All right, sounds good. So what's ballot access like in Maryland? Is it something that was not too hard for you, or is it difficult? We have candidates that range the spectrum. Some states are not so bad, others are very hard. What's it like in Maryland?
So we're in the middle of the road in Maryland. I've done a lot of work on ballot access here, and I'm on the National Ballot Access Committee. We have a 10,000 signature threshold that gets you 2 cycles of ballot access. And when it gets us ballot access at the state level, it means that no Green candidate has to submit subsequent petitions. So when I run for governor, or when I file for governor, I can simply go to the State Board of Elections and say I want to run for governor. I don't have to turn in any additional petitions. So that part of it is pretty good. We have a 1% vote test for maintaining it. And, that part is pretty good, too. We do invalidate 35 to 40% of handwritten wet signatures. That part is not great compared to other states. And so I think, in 2020, I worked at the State Board of Elections during the COVID state of emergency to allow electronic signatures on ballot petitions. We had a federal court case against the State Board of Elections. Part of the settlement was to allow electronic signatures. They have since taken it away, and that's really our big ballot access fight here is in order to try to, get that back. Now, just today, the governor signed a bill that took away the second submission. So we used to be able to submit 2 rounds of ballot petitions in order to make sure we got to the 10,000 signature threshold. And just today, the governor signed a bill that the Forward Party, and I kind of agree, thinks is a really flawed bill in the way that it is drafted, that takes away the ability to submit a second submission. So that's not so good. But at the same time, most of the small parties don't use that second submission, and it's really more of a question for charter amendments and initiatives than it is for third parties in that regard. So I would say so-so. We're mixed. I think, we're about in the middle of some states. I think in like 2001 or so, there was a significant lawsuit in the state of Maryland that went to the Supreme Court that drastically lowered the thresholds for ballot access. And since then, there's been a Green on the ballot in every election. There's been a Libertarian on the ballot in every election.
That's great.
Yeah, I mean, it's good. I would love it if we had like something that said have 0.25% of registered voters or something like that. But I'm not that upset with what we have. I think it could be way worse, and I think it could be better. So we'll take it and we'll make it work.
There you go. There you go. So how are you reaching your voters for this race? What's your campaign strategy?
Yeah, so a couple things. So first of all, we are in the process of visiting every one of the counties in the state of Maryland in order to have these sort of community meetings where we'll send mail out to Greens ahead of time and we'll reach out to people ahead of time. We're also doing a whole bunch of tabling events and things like that so that we have an opportunity to meet folks in those places. So those are like sort of traditional, ways of doing it. We are also incorporating a lot of mail, a lot of postcards to first to Greens, second to people who were once Greens but are no longer, and third, to targeted legislative districts where the Green Party has had the most success over the years. So we know what the top 20 legislative districts are out of the 47 that there are in the state. We know how they voted for Greens in the past. We know what precincts voted that way. So a combination of mail, Facebook ads, and those type of things will be very important in reaching out to those folks. And then I would say the next part of that is we are trying to get candidates in every county to run down ballot, and candidates in as many of those priority legislative districts as we can that are working alongside our campaign. And we think, having somebody on the ground who is running there, who we can help and they can help us, is a great way to be able to build the brand and build the party recognition.
Sounds good. Sounds like a good strategy. Sounds like the best of both worlds because you're running at the highest office, yet you're also not neglecting the smaller races as well.
Yeah, and with the smaller races, we're going to be pretty strategic about it. We're going to focus on a couple of things for recruiting people in the smaller races. First, those priority districts, right? Like those are where the bulk of our votes came from in the 2024 election. And Maryland was one of the best Jill Stein states there was in the country. So we feel pretty good about targeting those places. The second thing is we're going after the Democrat and Republican leadership in both houses. And we want to be able to run people against those leaders and hold them responsible for what their parties do and don't do. And so even if those are out of the priority districts, we want to go after the leaders. And then there's a group of Democrats who we think are in leadership positions on important committees who have stopped good legislation and passed bad legislation, and we want to go after those folks as well. And then this year, newly formed in Maryland, there's a MAGA Freedom Caucus of, strident Republicans who we think revel in cruelty instead of conservatism or any, real political alignment. And we want to run people against them too. So, we're recruiting people based on geography and where our districts are strong, but we're recruiting people also based on who we want to run against because we think it makes a good argument for the Green Party and a multi-party system.
Sure. So given your past experience with debating, will you have any opportunities to use the debating skills in this election? Will there be debates?
I hope so. So we have a petition going on our website right now, gogreen.com/debate, to allow us to get into the Maryland Public Television debates. Maryland Public Television is our state public television network. 30% of their funding comes from taxpayers. And what we would like to do is to get them to change their editorial standards so that they allow anybody who is on the ballot on the debate stage and the debate they host each year. Right now, they say anybody who's polling over 10% can be in their debate, but no third-party gubernatorial candidate since the Civil War has gotten more than 3.5%. So they have set the bar at a level that nobody is going to achieve. So instead, we're simply asking them to say if there are 5 candidates on the ballot in a general election for governor, then put 5 candidates on the debate stage. And we'll see how that goes. We know that it is both parties who don't want the challenge in those debates. It's not necessarily Maryland Public Television. It's both parties. And that's how they get their funding, and that's how they get their board approved and things like that. So they're trying to tread carefully. But we want to make that a difficult decision for them and force them to, let people in Maryland have the choice to hear all the choices on the ballot. So I hope so. I hope we get to be in debates. We're going to do our best on it. If not, we'll figure out how to make good public arguments and get them in front of people, even if they won't allow us on their debate stage.
Perfect. So, Andy, how can our audience support you and your campaign?
Yeah, sure. So our website is gogreen2026.com, and you can go there and you can see how to donate, you can see how to volunteer, you can see some of our policy positions. And so that's one way, is definitely to go there. A second thing is we shot 2 seasons of our Go Green 2026 podcast, and that is up on YouTube, but you can also access it through our website. We're getting ready for a 3rd season sometime here in 2025, and so we encourage people to subscribe to that on YouTube. And then the third thing I would say is our link tree is relatively regularly updated, and again, I think it's just Go Green 2026, and that has all of our social media on it, and we try to make sure that there are events up there, position statements, all of that type of thing. We see it as a living landing page, not as a static page, and we try to make sure that it's updated so that people can find all their links in one place. So yeah, website, podcast, link tree, all those things are great ways to get in touch and interact and support us.
Perfect. Andy, thank you for coming on the podcast today. We appreciate you talking about your campaign to us.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to come on, and I thank you to you and to all your listeners for checking this out. And I hope that everybody will, no matter whether they're in Maryland or elsewhere, I hope that everybody will make sure that they're hearing all they can from all the candidates so they can make informed choices, and that they don't get sucked into the propaganda of the news media and the 2-party system.
Exactly. We wish you all the best in your campaign and also everything else you do in your personal and professional life.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Bye now.